surface transportation projects, so bike-related, pedestrian, and even vehicular-related projects within the county. I also serve as my MPO's liaison for the county and serve on the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee. So on the side of that, I am also the founder of Black and Urban. Pretty much it's a digital space for Black planners, again, architects, forward thinkers, designers, for us to pretty much be able to write our ideas down. And I'm also in the process of allowing like videos and other types of blogging to be showcased on the site. I also have like a bunch of other services I'm not really going to get into right now, but I also do like writing contests. So for like college students, we should be having one this winter coming up, or this fall semester coming up for college students. We have Black in Slack. Again, that's like another digital platform where you can just look at job listings and look at new content when it comes to news feeds for planning related articles and stuff. And if you would like to chat on there as well, you know, it's a safe space to do so. And yeah, so that pretty much gets me into a list of demands for Black planners that myself, Kristen, Gigi, as well as Jermaine, and Dee, I've also seen your comments that we'll get into as well that you have provided, which were great. So we realized that, well, first, we've seen that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think his name is Brian Lee. He's an architect. I'm not sure if he's on this call as well. He had created a list of demands in regards to design. So essentially it's an architectural version of what we're trying to create. And I want to share with you guys a draft of, it's about 10 different demands. Do you mind if either you can share your screen to that demands, or I can share my screen?
Let me see if I can share mine.
You can try sharing it, it's up to you. But so as we're bringing that up, essentially the list of demands are 10 demands that speak in different facets of, I guess, planning and the intersection of Black planners. So for example, we have information in regards to how we would like APA and other other planning organizations respond to what's going on now, and to what we would like to see as Black planners in practice. And a lot of it too goes into the education of planning and the Black environment. So I'm not sure how much of you guys or how many of you guys are in college right now, but the curriculum that we go through in college doesn't necessarily speak on the history of Black planners or even Black environments. So I'm speaking from the continent of Africa to even Black neighborhoods. And I do think that needs to change for especially white Americans or non-Black Americans to understand just who we are as people and how we interact with our environment. So let me try to, let me see. Oh yeah, so I'm unable to share, but I mean, so two things I'll do. Verbally, I'll just go through the list if we're unable to share. And then I will also provide the link it's a Google Doc. So I'll provide the link to the chat box so everyone can access it and leave comments, all right? Okay, here we go. So yeah, starting with the first one, as I've mentioned, this one tackles AICP Code of Ethics. As a certified planner, I realized that, well, as a certified planner, you would realize that the Code of Ethics is an essential or important component to planning, right, and APA. And I think this is an opportunity for us as Black planners to essentially allow specific language about African-American communities, and even just being knowledgeable just having the planning field be knowledgeable about Black and African American communities and how the practice relates to our communities. So I think we definitely have like that opportunity to go forward to try to pressure APA to include that. So the second one, kind of skipped over it. Sorry, if you just scroll up a bit.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, you're good.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah. So the second one, the second and third one, I should say, goes into more of a public statement. We've seen already that like a lot of corporations and different companies and agencies are putting out public statements about what they're seeing with Black Lives Matter. But I do believe that I think it would be best for us to try to pressure some of these organizations, whether it's APA chapters or there's other planning organizations out there. They've already done it, to be honest. So, I'm not trying to single out APA per se, but I do think, and it has done it. But the thing is, we need to have continuous conversation and to, have them publicize it, not only in this instance where it seems fashionable, so we want to have it prevalent, and we want it in the forefront at all times. So just having a public statement saying, hey, we know the history of Black American communities in this country, we stand by you. And I think that would mean a lot. Some people may think of it as a performative measure, and don't get me wrong, I do see initiatives like this to be performative measures, but at the same time, I think it is very important to have a representation in that sense, to making a public statement saying that you support a particular group or a particular initiative. So going into 3, similarly, again, well, yeah, 2 and 3, they kind of intertwine, but 3 kind of talked about what I just mentioned, and then 2 looks into the history of American policies, the history of American initiatives of segregation from transportation to housing. And again, I think it's important for organizations to understand the role that our government has taken place. And if you guys don't believe me, I'm currently reading The Color of Law by Richard Rothenstein, I believe. I highly recommend that book for everyone else to just get a good understanding of what race relations and planning initiatives have taken place in this country. So going into 4, again, similarly, representation matters policies. I think it's, and I believe Gigi had provided a great amount of insight in regards to this, where we need to pressure APA and again, other types of planning organizations to kind of require or encourage a certain number of percentage of like Black folks in on the executive board or in some type of high role of their executive level, So we need to see representation within these organizations. We need to see Black men, Black women. I would love to expand that to, the Latinos and Indigenous folks, et cetera. We need to see these roles occupied by people of color, and it's very important. I think a lot of us wouldn't be here if we haven't seen Black and other people of color in these roles. So again, we got to apply pressure to that, right? And so number 5 goes into establishing some type of performance measures, goals, performance measures, and benchmarks to try to attract and retain Black planners within our field. At least now, like we're seeing a lot of, and perhaps it's because of social media, we're seeing a lot of Black planners that are very vocal. I must say the folks that are on the West Coast appear to be much vocal than the folks on the East Coast, which is what I love. And yeah, so like we just need to pretty much try to set some standard where we can evaluate the process of Black planners coming into the field. And even if it's within a job, like what would encourage you to become a planner and then what is discouraging you from staying a planner. You know, we need to find out that information, and perhaps we can try to pressure some of these organizations to take data or collect data on that. So going forward, number 6 is establishing some type of national ambassador mentorship program that will help Black, Indigenous, and people of color. There are many organizations that already kind of have like some type of youth mentoring program, but I think we should try to focus one that would that we should try to implement one that would focus on Black, planners, and again, extend that to other non-Black people of color as well. So moving forward, I want to, so number 7 is a bit controversial right now. This is actually the reason why this whole list of demands have been really stalled. And I will get into like the next steps after I get through the list. It's short. I tend to like talk fast and go pretty fast, but if I'm talking too fast, just let me know. But number 7 is a bit controversial right now. So at least in the practice of planning, when I went through, undergrad, grad school, CPTED, CPTED, some folks know it as either or, but it's crime prevention through environmental design. It was used as a design or policy initiative to try to hinder or prevent crime in certain areas, right? And now we're seeing a lot of backlash or we're seeing a lot of pushback from particularly, I want to say, urban designers, perhaps architects as well, where they're saying CPTED is not essentially the best social reform that we would need. So I would like to get a lot of feedback on this. I think planners have a different understanding of it. I'm thinking architecture as a minor, so I know like certain historical architectural styles, but of course not trained as an architect. So I would like to have as many urban designers and architects feedback or perspectives on this, particularly I believe where they're coming from, architects. I'm not trying to talk in their talking points, but it appears that brutalist architectural style is what they have an issue with, and with that I totally agree. And but instead of eliminating CPTED altogether, I do want to see if we can work with it in some type of reform. So there are different initiatives and ways that CPTED can be positive, but again, like I'm willing to hear from other folks just to see if the negatives outweigh the positives, right? So perhaps we can have a little discussion about that later on. So going into number 8, advocating for implementable equity strategies, such as what is good for white neighborhoods shall be good for Black neighborhoods. And so to be honest, I've written this particular list of demands, and it just makes the most sense when it comes to equity. I think when we hear the term equity, we use, again, this type of performative type of language to make it sound sexy, to make our organizations appear that we are equitable, but it doesn't really sit well with me, So when I say implementable equity strategies and what is good in a white neighborhood should be good for a Black neighborhood, I'm not going to get into the story, but I just had a conference call earlier today with New Jersey's Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and I'm on the equity team. And they didn't, I tried to explain, or, I tried to explain in my ability the same type of initiative or the same type of way that we can practice planning. But I'm pretty much like, I think I was like the only Black guy on there. So they didn't appear to take it well. So perhaps this may need some language changes as well, but I'm just going to explain a little bit about what I think, it mean and where it can go. Essentially, when it comes to transportation planning, at least, and in New Jersey, I must call out New Jersey for that. And New Jersey is known to be a very segregated state. So we have approximately 560 municipalities, right? And each municipality has, with of course the exception of a few, but many municipalities are known to be very segregated. Some are wealthy with predominantly white folks, and then some are poor with predominantly Black folks. And there is, mix, of course, in certain municipalities. However, we can see that a lot of transportation projects, a lot of funding, a lot of time goes into these wealthier communities, and they leave behind these poorer, for lack of better words, poorer or lower income communities. And for example, what I had proposed today was we should make some type of comparable display of transportation, either projects or intersection. I'm working particularly on the intersection field or team where we can compare intersections by either function class within one particular community, whether it's a community of color, low income, and compare that to a white, more higher income community, and see what those design differences are, And then from there, as we see those differences in design, we can know essentially what the lower income community needs or is lacking. And when it comes to equity, you have the higher income folks that essentially have what they need to have safe streets and roads. So we need to have those designs and lower income communities go up to that same level. So that's what I think about with equity, and that's what I'm thinking about with number 8, I believe it was. And again, it's up for debate. I'm willing to hear more information about that. And lastly, well, second to last, APA membership, number 9. So this particular demand, it spans every race, every creed, every color, etc. The cost of APA membership is exuberant, right? Right now, I'm a mentor for AICP, the pilot candidate, and I have a mentee who is discouraged from taking the AICP exam simply because the APA membership, after she, God willing, after she passed the exam, will be too high for her. And I thought that was just ridiculous. You have these young professionals. I consider myself a young professional. Like, we're going into the workforce. Not everyone has the opportunity to have their jobs pay for memberships, for APA membership and even AICP certification. And I think it's a big loss that some folks are discouraged from either being a member or pursuing or furthering their career in planning because of the cost. So I think APA has done a great job in the past where they've created at least this pilot candidate AICP program. And I think student membership fees are still applicable for after 2 years after you graduate. But I think we can do more, and I think we can go further. And again, I would love to hear feedback from you guys. And lastly, education. So, as I've mentioned before, myself as well as my other colleagues, even Dee had provided some great comments where we do believe that some either African-American courses need to, related to planning, of course, need to be implemented within planning accredited school curriculum, right? So whether it's the bullet point A shows, we need to know more information, not necessarily we as Black folks, but white folks as well need to know about African-American neighborhoods within the US, and the adverse impacts due to historic and contemporary policies related to housing, transportation, zoning, gentrification, and other exclusionary policies and practices. And again, I think I just wrote B in there, which I mentioned earlier, The Color of Law by Richard Rothenstein. Perhaps that should be a mandatory read, and this is just one suggestion of a book. And Gisela has provided a great list of other books and other authors related to planning below. And so we could get to that later on. But see, like I think it's important for us to understand African city development and how that pretty much translates from colonialism to post-colonialism. That's very important as we're talking about dismantling white supremacy, you know? We don't know, we haven't learned anything, and I can say we because I know it's not in any school's curriculum about African cities. And I had to take it upon myself to learn about Benin City in Nigeria, or like different other cities throughout the whole continent of Africa. And I think that's a disservice to us as students, where we learn about European cities, but not, you know, predominantly Black cities, whether it's in the U.S. or abroad. So again, for these comments, I truly agree. Like, for example, Pruitt Ego, I'm not sure if, you know, Pruitt Ego is well known to other folks as well, but that's a very interesting take on when it comes to policy planning and Black people and segregation, you know, Black Wall Street as well. But I want to do comment though that perhaps D, your comment is more applicable to A, and that's just semantics. But you know, I think it would flow well with A as opposed to C. But again, that's later on. We can like edit that later at a later time. So yeah, just looking at different electives at racial. Perhaps we can have different electives that take a look at racial injustices, social, economic, and psychological impacts of racism within the built environment. And lastly, include prominent Black urbanists of historical and contemporary significance in these accredited schools. And again, GSLA has provided like a great list of different either activists, authors, of Black planners and urbanists, you know. So Ethel Lawrence, for example, at least for the PP exam, my professional planning exam, the license for New Jersey, we had to learn about Ethel Lawrence because she essentially she's known as like the godmother of fair housing share, you know, and a lot of folks don't know about that. And I didn't even know about that prior to taking the exam. So I'm done talking. So, you know, I'll open it up to conversation and, you know, of course, feedback, and of course, to hear from you guys as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Of course. Thank you, Byron. Somebody wants to know if you'll share the document. It is your document, so I want you to be able to comment on that as far as how you want to go with that one. And you could reply to them in the chat, or you can do it right here. That was a document that I was just fortunate enough to be asked to be a part of and just comment on. I did want to talk about Ashley Johnson. She mentioned about you don't want to be the token Black person. Feel free to jump in whenever, you know, and like say your 2 cents, but I definitely agree with you on that one. Sometimes even when you are in a predominantly Black city, like my last city was, you're still quote unquote the predominantly Black person because nobody else wants to say or take on those extra things. And of course, all of us, whether we're single, kids, married, or just, you know, living life, it is a lot to take on being the Black champion. And it's not really something that I would say most of us signed up for. Like, you signed up to be a planner, you didn't sign up to like champion the rock and, you know, put everybody on your back and just, you know, go across the finish line. It's a heavy responsibility. So I wanted to highlight that. It's a very good point, and I wanted her to kind of like, you know, drop her 2 cents or what she felt about it. So Ashley, whenever you have the floor.
Yeah. So hey everybody, I'm Ashley. I'm from, I don't know if you could see me if I share my video.
Hey.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah. So I'm Ashley. I'm from Detroit, but now I'm in Minneapolis. And when I saw number 4, and I think it was number 4, if it's possible to scroll to it to make sure I'm talking about the right one.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I saw number 4, the requiring or encouraging, I think it's either or, of course, but I was leaning more toward the encouraging, or some kind of way that we can prove some intention around the fact that Black leadership is actively being recruited or engaged. I shy toward not requirement because I feel like it's an outrage that we aren't just already in leadership. And I feel like that is kind of a given. Like we have contributed to this profession in so many ways, and across the country we have made so many strides. To think that we're not in leadership, it should be automatically an outrage. I don't necessarily feel like a requirement personally is what needs to take place there. I just think that it kind of needs to be like, hey, there's no Latinx people here. There's no Black people here. What decisions are really truly being made on behalf of communities across the United States that we are supposed to be championing ourselves for? How do we make those leadership decisions on behalf of the APA and we're not there? So I just lean more toward like pushing and encouragement, because requirements for me, I feel like it's kind of, and Victoria made a good point about this too. There's an era of, how did she put it? There's an air of, shouldn't it necessarily kind of be a given? Like, and are we, by making like a Black planner a requirement on a board, for example, are we giving the power to the current leadership to then determine who that Black person is? Are we not taking that power of saying, you know, we want representation versus them constantly, you know, choosing who that Black person is and kind of like putting them in a position of power, whoever it is, whoever we are, you know, in representation. Like, I just feel like if we're not there yet, it's problematic to make it a requirement and we don't have that representation. But thank you for like including me.
Of course. I think that's a really awesome point that you made. Like in Texas, there's no one on, like we have a Texas chapter and then we have like a local Midwest chapter, and there's nobody Black on either or. And if they are, they're like the treasurer or they want you to run social media. And there's nothing wrong with that, because like we mentioned earlier, taking on any of these roles is an extra responsibility that you're probably not getting paid for. So you really got to be wanting to do it. But at the same time, like she mentioned, when is it going to be APA to be like, you know what? They do just as much, they contribute just as much, if not more, to what's happening and what's created. Some of the most phenomenal places that are designed and built are from our designs, from Black architects, Black planners, Black advocates, so on and so forth. So in that sense, like she said, do we want to just keep being a checkbox on the list, or do we want to honestly be in that role because like we really know how to do it, and we really, now we have the power to hire other people? Because I know some people don't want to say it and don't want to, you know, come to terms with it, but every Black planner isn't down. Every Black planner isn't in the situation or in the mindset to be like, you know what, if I'm on, I want to put other people on. They're trying to get to the top just as everybody else. And it's unfortunate, but I've seen it happen, honestly, in real life. You have Black planners who are going to do whatever it takes to get to the top, whether that's senior planner, principal, planning director, whatever. So just because you have somebody Black in power doesn't mean that they're going to be looking out for the next Black person that's coming up, whether they're an intern or planning tech, straight out of high school or straight out of undergraduate or graduate school. So I definitely agree with her on that, in the sense of we don't have to, it shouldn't be for us to wake up APA, or if you're part of Congress for the New Urbanism, CNU or AIA, it should be more so APA should be woke already. Like they should already know that they post about us, they post things like Mitchell Silver, like that's a huge champion for us, but like that's not enough. That's not enough. And it's awesome what he's doing, the role that he's in, but it shouldn't have taken this long for somebody like Mitchell Silver to have been in this role. It shouldn't have taken this long, and it shouldn't have been, you know, just champion, like every time they post, it's like, oh, don't forget Mitchell Silver is here. Like we know, we love Mitchell Silver. We're definitely appreciative of like the light that the door he's opening for us, but okay, what trickle down effect? What about APA at the state level? APA, the exam itself. I know Byron mentioned that. Me personally, I've taken it twice, and I missed it by both times. At this point, I'm not even tripping about taking it no more, for the fact of the maintenance of it. Actually, the maintenance is not even a real issue. It's just the simple fact of I took the test and it's literally nothing on there that is seemingly important. So if we're gonna make it, and they talked about this in the Radicalizing Urban Planning that Jose did a couple of weeks ago out of LA about, you know, an equitable certification. I think that's way more effective than just like an AICP, because all of you can probably attest, some planners that got that AICP and they shouldn't be doing anything. They should just they should be in a whole other profession, based on ethics or moral. Like, they shouldn't be doing anything. These are people that you still gotta like walk through as far as like, this is why this isn't right. So to me, at this point, AICP doesn't necessarily make you a great planner. It just means that you're a great test taker. And some people can, speak otherwise, but that was a really good point. Thank you for bringing it up. Somebody forgive me for this like raise a hand thing. I'm just kind of figuring it out. But if anybody else wants to jump in on that or any comment on anything that Byron shared, feel free. Oh, there we go.
Hi, this is Fabiola. I raised my hand.
Yes, I don't know how to do that yet, but yes, go ahead.
I will lower my hand now to turn on my video. Hi, so I'm the person behind the Beyond the Urban Planning page on Instagram. So some of you can help me. Thank you. One thing that I would like to kind of talk about, maybe suggest that be on this list is, I think I would like to see APA kind of like take more lead on providing some kind of training or assessment or like guidance for people that are on planning and zoning board. I live in Rhode Island, and I know that like a few months ago, one of the legislations that came out is that planning and zoning board members have to do a certain hours of training for climate change and also land use. So what essentially that is doing is trying to kind of like get a sense of how much people know about the road that they're about to go in. And when I was reviewing the materials, I was really shocked that there is nothing on there that tests people's knowledge about equity or like just like the history about the decisions that they're making, how it's going to impact certain communities. There are a lot of people in Rhode Island that we know that are on zoning boards that literally have no like knowledge of what they're doing. So right now, as the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the chapter, I suggested that we work with Grow Smart Rhode Island because they provide training for zoning and board members right now for land use. So I'm trying to work with them to see if we can come up with some kind of training that is focused on diversity and inclusion in planning. And I don't know, I think it would be great if APA has something for me to go off of. So I don't know if anybody have done anything like this that might have a suggestion or anything like that. So if you have any recommendations, but I think that would be really something that I think APA need to do is providing guidance on that.
That's a really good point. Mark Lewis DeGrace, he is about to talk about the AICP, but before he does, most of us probably, if you are in a city, you know that your zoning board or your P&Z are probably idiots. Most of them don't know anything about planning. The last city I was in, they were people that just wanted something to do. And unfortunately, APA does put out guides, kind of like with tactical urbanism, they put out stuff, but they don't get you from point A to point B. They just tell you about the result. They don't tell you what to do when there's somebody on your board who has no idea what zoning is. And that's kind of an issue in the sense of essentially anybody can be on the board, whether that's P&Z, zoning board of adjustment, hell, city council, honestly, anybody could do it. And it doesn't really require them to like know anything until it's too late. So these are the people that get the power to say like, oh yeah, that should be rezoned. In reality, it doesn't make sense, but they don't understand it no matter how many packages you send them, how many times they come up to City Hall. So I think that's definitely a really good suggestion in the sense of, not to say be more stringent in what we look for in zoning board members and things of that nature, but when they're there, okay, how can we make sure that they're cognizant of, okay, now I have a position that I got to talk for everybody. I just can't talk about me and my neighborhood. I got to look at everybody in my city. Mark, go ahead and talk about AICP.
Thanks. So first, I don't necessarily disagree with what you were saying about there are some planners who are AICP who don't really know anything. That being said, I can't tell you the number of times I've come into a new job or a new city, and the first question other planners ask is, are you AICP? Most of them are white, and the first thing I say is, yes, I am. more often than not, I've seen it as kind of the first step in being taken seriously as a planner. And I'm the professional development officer elect for National Capital Area Chapter, which is DC, Montgomery, and Prince George's County in Maryland. And one of my responsibilities is to help anybody who wants to get AICP, help them get that. So that's part of my responsibility. But I think it's important to kind of do that first step to kind of, that allows us to walk in the door. And I'll also say, again, just my experience, we have to run for those offices, like you were saying. Now I know DC, it's just DC and 2 suburban counties, so it's still relatively small. For like California or Texas or a larger state, it's going to be harder to get your foot in the door and run for those offices. But the only way you're going to get on most of those boards is to run for an office, have your network, put your name out there, and just email everybody and just say, hey, I'm running for this. I'd love to get your vote. And the only way we're going, and again, I know this just from my experience, the only way we're going to be represented is if we're at the table and we use that as a platform. I know we put out a statement after George Floyd, and somebody made the comment, why didn't we put out a statement 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 years ago? I wasn't on the board then, but I think it was the fact that APA National put something out, Mitch Silver helped force something like that out. So then the pressure was on us to do likewise. And going forward, I'd like to make sure that we're more proactive as a board. The APA's Diversity and Inclusivity Committee, they sent out a survey to several state chapters, and some state chapters are looking at providing scholarships to students of color at any graduate programs. So those are some things that some chapters are doing. But each chapter does whatever they want to do, and they're not going to react to what we as Black planners are doing unless we say, hey, why aren't you, California's doing this, why aren't you doing this? Why isn't Minneapolis, why isn't Minnesota doing this? Why isn't Florida doing this? So kind of know what other chapters are doing and force your chapter to do likewise. And with that, I'll shut up. And if anybody's interested in AICP, let me know.
Thank you, Mark. If you haven't already, you can drop your email address in the chat. And if anybody is interested in reaching out to Mark, feel free to write his email address down. I mean, I'll have it down on this big Google sheet, but if you want it right now, feel free to do that. Thank you again. Gigi, go ahead. Yeah, she's somewhere in here.
I'm sorry about that. It's really dark.
Go ahead, no problem.
So to piggyback off of Fabiola, I agree with her as it relates to having some type of training for people on the board. I'm actually the chair of the Planning and Zoning Board in my city. And yeah, the other people, they don't even really know how to be on a board just in general, not planning and zoning, just be on a board. I've been on boards for the past few years, and I've been a secretary for boards, so I understand like what the ropes are, but a lot of them don't even know how to make a motion, simple stuff like that. So I do think that training is required. I do know that we have training for people on boards in the state of Florida, and I did go to the training, but I really didn't need it. The other people needed it more than I did, and I suggested to the mayor that they have them go, but I don't know what happened, honestly. But I'm basically the only planner on the board, so no one else really knows, what's going on, and they're not really prepared when we have our meetings. They ask stupid questions to the staff, and if they would have read the backup, then they would have known the answer. Simple stuff like that. So I do agree that some type of training should be encouraged for people that get on the boards.
Definitely. Like you said about cities, most people that get on a board, they they go to the conferences just so the city can pay for it, and they don't even like learn anything from it because they only have to do like, at least in Texas, they don't have to do like 3 classes or something like that, or 3 hours, something like that. And it's just like the most basic session that they offer at the conference, which is about, zoning regulation. And they're supposed to be on top of it almost as if they're planning like us. But like you said, you waste a lot of time. And I think sometimes that is intentional in the sense of they waste a lot of time in meetings. So it discourages people from wanting to talk if they're there in opposition. And it discourages people from wanting to keep coming out. If they're like, man, all they do is talk and argue for like 30 minutes. I'm never coming back. And that, like Fabiola said, those are the people that are making your decisions. And that's the place where everybody's supposed to, have a voice and come out. 90% of people don't come out for the fact that they don't want to sit through the meeting and they don't feel like it's going anywhere. So that's a good point. I definitely think as a whole, getting more people educated about what it means to be on a board, especially planning and zoning and like zoning board of adjustments. Let's see. Somebody said just got on board just to block affordable housing. That's pretty typical. Unfortunately, a lot of people get on board, especially when it comes to planning, when they realize that zoning can, really amp up that NIMBY power. They get on it just so they can oppose things, even if they didn't care about it X amount of years ago. But now they know that if I get on this board, I can stop those gas stations from coming. I can stop them from building apartments. I have a big say in that. And those people are the people that literally tout what they do as far as like, yeah, I was the deciding vote on why that didn't come here. And some people do know what they're doing. They're not, ignorant to how a board works, but they're misusing their power in the sense of being on this board, knowing that people aren't going to come out. And that one decision pretty much changes the dynamic of that whole city or that whole region or county or whatever. It was something else that, I don't know, Byron, if you had something.
Yeah, real quick about AICP. Well, first, I've added everyone who requested to participate in the list of demands. Just let me know again. Again, just click on the link in the chat box, and it'll go to my email, and I'll just add everyone in there with commenting. But yeah, so switching gears. Well, actually, before I switch gears real quick, also, let me talk about what we intend to do with this list of demand, right? Essentially, I think said it best where it starts off, it should start off as a grassroots effort. Is my audio working? I'm having issues.
It's cutting out a little bit, but I don't know if that's just on my end. It may be different.
Okay.
It's cutting out in and out. It's cutting in and out.
I'm sorry about that. Let me try to figure it out, and I'll come back to you guys.
Okay.
All right.
So while Byron's getting, coming back to his point about the demands for APA, just anybody just out there, what's something that you've seen, or if you've had maybe white colleagues, white supervisors or friends ask you, like, what do I do? What do I read? Or how can I be a better ally? Or especially if you're if you've had planning colleagues who are white that have reached out to you in the sense of, how can I be better? If anybody wants to share, like what do you think are like real time changes and influences that we can make from like a 6-month to 18-month time period? Sharing those.
Hi, this is Jasmine. My name is Jasmine. I'm a city planner with the city of Chicago. I just started actually during the lockdown, so that's been fun. But I have a background in a degree in architecture as well. And I was very involved with NOMA, the National Organization of Minority Architects. And I think in terms of creating more planners of color, they have a good precedent in their Project Pipeline program, where they have like a summer camp for elementary kids to expose them to architecture and planning. And then they support kids in high school, and they have a design build program. And then in college, they offer scholarships, and they try to connect kids to internships. So I think something like that for Black urban planners, more geared towards planning than architecture, but, in working in coordination with them would be very beneficial. And I think APA should financially, as well as, support us, but financially support the establishment of a more formalized program. Because like Byron said, there's a lot of one-offs kind of spread out, but if it was a more formalized thing across the country, that could be, or some type of framework that could be implemented anywhere, that would be something that could be established within the next year for sure.
Thank you for that. I don't know about any of y'all's graduate program or undergraduate program, but we didn't have like the best pipeline into like the real world. It was kind of like find an internship and then figure it out. So having something like that, having a more basically intentional push to get more Black planners, more Black kids to want to be planners, in a sense of being a planner takes a lot of different roles as far as just like somebody who does plans. I mean, some of us maybe in this group have been doing planning for X amount of years that have never had to do a site plan review. So it takes a lot of different shapes. So I think, like what Jasmine said, is really APA being like intentional about it, not like just sprinkling it in here, sprinkling it in there, being very proactive instead of reactive. As we're seeing now, we're seeing everybody, like Mark mentioned, you know, they're posting the things about we're gonna do this to be more inclusive and we're gonna do this to be more equitable, but why now? I'm pretty sure these places like APA have Black people involved for decades. Why now are their voices more vulnerable and more acceptable? So it's one of those things that you kind of like gotta keep your foot on the gas in the sense of being more proactive instead of reactive. Mitchell, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I just want to jump in and say that I think APA has some potential to leverage the relationship and that they have to improve the relationship they have with HBCUs, because there is a good amount of HBCUs that have urban planning programs that, you know, I attended one at Jackson State, and we talked a lot about you know, Black community and specific legal cases and movements that impacted the Black community and other communities of color in very significant ways. So a lot of curriculum and information is out there already being taught in certain schools. So there's, you know, a great there's the potential for a pathway to kind of spread that knowledge and teaching elsewhere.
Thank you for that. For those of us who didn't go to HBCU for your graduate or undergraduate program, I do think in a way that maybe I wouldn't say you missed out, but people can't teach what they don't know. So I personally didn't have any Black professors. I did have more international professors and white, so to speak, but and maybe it's me, I don't know how people would feel about learning about Black communities and Black history through the Black lens if it's coming from a white teacher. Like, that's kind of, not saying they don't know, but if you have a Black teacher who maybe has lived it, seen it, experienced it, then the trickle-down effect is a lot more impactful. So I definitely, I can't speak for HBCUs. I didn't go to one for undergrad or graduate school, but I definitely think the pipeline there is a lot stronger. And I definitely think APA, like you said, has a lot of potential to do a lot of things. It's just a matter of like constantly nudging them and pushing them and like letting them know like, hey, it's almost like it has to be an every week, every day kind of thing to kind of really get them that represent or understand it.
Can I just say something super quick? This is Fabiola again. I just want to echo what Jasmine said. So I was reviewing the link you sent, and I think I really hope that suggestion gets on the list, because in Rhode Island, there is a high school here called Charette High School, and it is an urban planning and historic preservation high school. And over 90% of their students are students of color. So these are a bunch of high schoolers just learning about urban planning. And I'm working with them to, you know, like I go to the school, I talk, you know, to the kids, because unfortunately in the state of Rhode Island, I'm like one of very few Black planners in the whole state. And so just trying to work with these kids, but it's like, but I don't have any recommendations except you know, working with planners here, trying to get them internships and programs, just, you know, sharing resources. But I think if APA would have something more solid to share with these students, I think that would be really awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Like Gigi mentioned in the chat, Gigi was the first person that I saw really creating that space for us to exist. But what she's doing is really kind of putting urban planning on the spotlight for Black kids, whether they're in high school or in college already. And I think getting that's already something that's been, you know, kind of crafted, and it's still growing. Getting that to APA to be like, okay, I already did all the legwork, just put it out there and push it. Because having it on a platform like APA's puts a lot more heat to it, and it puts a lot more fire behind it, and it's like, again, it's intentional. So shout out to Gigi. If you don't know already, you can go check out her social media, where she's like I said, been pushing the narrative of, okay, we need to get more Black kids in planning. We need to get more representation in planning. And again, that spreads from not just Black to Latino to women. There's nothing more frustrating than being probably the only woman in your office, or being the only woman of color in your office, as far as talking about things when it comes to development that are just outright stupid, but because they're all men, white men, that they don't see the issue. So thank you, Fabiola and Jasmine, and of course Gigi, for like creating that platform and always pushing that narrative. Delete that. So there was, like I said, there's no real like outline. If there's anything that anybody wants to talk about or put out there, feel free to unmute yourself and you know, jump in there and say what you want to say. You know, pitch in what you want to pitch in, or vent some of your frustrations about what's going on, and it's kind of be a Black and urban planning, whether male or female.
Hi, this is Caroline. I'm in Los Angeles County, and I work in parks and open space.
Very cool.
And one thing that I've really been noticing, especially I grew up in LA, grew up in the lower income, is just the design not taking into consideration women and people with disabilities, like making things more equitable, because especially in our communities, women and people with disabilities are already ignored. And then when we get into park planning, you know, one of the things, like, I'm fighting with my boss, and it's also interesting because my boss is Black, and trying to explain to him the need for an all abilities playground. Like, there's new technology, there's new things learning, and also going into the parklands as a woman. When somebody's saying, oh, we need more trees here, I'm like, well, more trees, and also put more lights with those trees. So like when we're walking, we feel safe. So it's just like also like the other, within our community, we have these other communities that are very ignored, that, you know, we just have a lot to bring up. So that's what I want to talk about.
Very cool. Thank you. As somebody who's also in, I guess not quote unquote park planning, but placemaking, it's tedious and frustrating trying to get people to understand why you need access and you don't have a car. I live in Texas, in a city that doesn't have public transit at all. So it takes us like 45 minutes to get everywhere. Dallas, Fort Worth, well, maybe not Fort Worth. And then like you said, all accessible park, even just all accessible at your local, like your city hall, your courts. I've seen way too many people who struggle getting to city hall or getting up the ramp because of poor design. Hell, myself, I fractured my ankle last year in my city. My job didn't have a ramp. So I had to park at the back and walk all the way around every day on crutches. Just for the fact that nobody thought that made sense. And I think, again, as planners, we take on a lot of roles, and sometimes you have to know, like, ADA compliance is more than just slapping some handicap stickers in the front, some spaces in the front. It's more than just, you know, putting them out there just so you can get the, you know, check the box and keep going. It's simple stuff like that. It's like, well, this seems pretty common sense as to why, if it's gonna be a park, it needs to be accessible for people from all walks of life who have disabilities. Maybe they're temporary or they're permanent. It seems pretty straightforward. So thank you for bringing that up.
You also brought up one other thing to mind when you said going to like City Hall and stuff, because like here you have to pay for parking, you know, to go to the City Hall. So like for our community to be able to like go in and advocate, it's like, okay, you got, whether you're taking the bus and then $20 to park, to try and get permits to do your activities. It's, that's another thing where I think, like, you know, to go to City Hall to conform, you should have 2 hours free parking and a sliding scale after that.
Definitely. And that's one of the things that thankfully here we don't have parking everywhere in City Hall. You pay for it by choice, but it's getting to the point that if you really want to park, you gotta pay. If you want to park close, so definitely. Christy, go ahead.
My bad, I'm struggling with this technology, y'all. So I had the chance to help with the Great Places in America stuff, and even though that was really fun, I was pretty irritated that I didn't see any Black communities. And they just, the narrative is Black people equals hood, and that's just not always the case. And even if it is hood, we got the best stuff sometimes. So that's something that I would love to see. The Black community definitely is very inclusive and understanding. So we will make sure we have like mobility options, accessibility. We take the environment and everything really well. Like all the criteria that's listed for a place to be considered great places, a lot of Black communities have that. And I would love to work with someone in this chat to create this list, and maybe we could pop up in some cities one day, pop up in a couple hoods, and create a Black Spaces in America or Black placemaking in America, and just have a grand time, because we're not gonna allow the destruction of a Wall Street to happen again. Like, we're gonna highlight what's going well and how we can keep doing that in other cities across the nation.
Yeah, turn me up. Most definitely. Whenever somebody thinks of designing the Black hood, they think the first thing we want is a basketball court. Like, every Black kid don't know how to hoop. Every Black kid don't want to hoop.
But I also hate how they just put a swimming pool in these communities. How many Black people swimming? I mean, I'm not saying Black people don't swim. Don't get me wrong. But in a community where they would rather play basketball or baseball, even golf, like, we just what works for the community?
Definitely. And I think that goes back into design in the sense of, even at the city planner level, like on the public sector, I'm not telling you to push the narrative to where you lose your job. Like, nah, do what you got to do to make sure you got bread. But at the same time, there's most people that want to come in and do these big projects. They always want to throw in a pocket park, like a little pocket park with like 2 slides. Like, you can keep it because it ain't nobody. It's designed in a way that it's gonna really benefit the houses on this side that are usually bigger. They cost more. So they're not really parks for the public. And that's really in the sense of Black communities know what they want, but we as planners, as our profession, we always go in like, okay, we know what you want. We know what's better for you than you do. And I've seen that in real life in the sense of there are some people who are like, we know what they want. And I'm like, well, what street are they on? What do you know about them? And they're like, well, we don't, from the stats, we know what they want, but it's more in the sense of you got to know what they want in real life. So like Chrissy was saying, baseball, golf, soccer complexes.
There's a spot in Lewis that has a whole chess little park. They turned like a vacant building lot into just a chess park for old people to come play with the kids, and it's popular.
Yeah, and it's a sense of, like, I worked in a community that was predominantly Hispanic and Black, and soccer team is phenomenal. Don't got one soccer complex. There's one at the school, and they're sharing that with the track team and the baseball team. It seems pretty common sense as far as if kids want to play soccer or if they play select soccer, the school is gated after a certain time. And the summertime is only open if you're doing workouts at the high school. So it's one of those things of people come in and they want to spend money, but on dumb shit in the sense of, let me throw another pocket park or let me throw another trail that's disconnected from the rest of your trail system. It's really, Black communities know what they want. They may not have all the words together, they may not have all the thoughts together, but they know what they want and what they need. Sometimes it's a little far-fetched and it's out of the budget, you know what I'm saying? But we've seen so many things happen on a shoestring budget that you think back down, like, ain't no way that should have been able to be approved. And then we don't. When we get to a Black community, we're like, okay, well, we're gonna throw them what we think they want, and we're gonna spend as little bit of money and time and keep it kicking. So it's really about, like, pushing the gas, pushing the narrative in the sense of, okay, sometimes you may have to do that outside of the public sector, because coming from a public sector planner, they don't want you to do that. They don't want you to be so vocal in something that's going to possibly piss off your mayor, your city council, that kind of thing. Somebody asked, Jalen, how are public planners reaching out to minority communities? If you are a public planner, feel free to jump in and comment how your city does it, or what you know, or what you've heard of, how they reach out to your minority population, whether that's Black, Latino, Asian, Vietnamese.
When I was, hi, this is Fabiola. When I was in Omaha, I worked for the city of Omaha. And one thing that I did do was that every year, North Omaha, which is the predominantly African-American community, they do Omaha Days. And it is when all the Black folks that have left the community come together one day, and like there's like just a big old parade in North Omaha. It's a very pride and really big event. So during the fair housing assessment, when I was doing that work, one thing that I did do was that we set up a booth at Omaha Days. So we gather input from people and, like just like made stuff for the kids and just like really be involved. Now, the sad part is I was one of the very few African-American planner in the department. And unfortunately, I was the only one who showed up on a Saturday to have the booth and get input from people. So they will shut. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's something that we need to work on too.
Go ahead, Richard.
Hi everyone, this is Richard. I think what I think of a lot of the time in how I do planning, and I'm not saying that we do this all the time at the LA Department of Transportation, we should. But I think about, for example, like as a social worker, we always apply what's called the strengths-based perspective. So usually when I work with high school students, I always preface everything by saying, we're gonna talk about something you're an expert in, and that is your hood. And I think always applying that framework of saying you're an expert to this, and I'm just gonna help you translate so we can understand a common ground is important. And I always think about myself as an archivist of resident stories and being like, my job should literally be 80% in the field and 20% in the office. Like I don't necessarily should be binded to capital C city when my relationship and my service and commitment is to lowercase c city, which is residents and community. And I think a lot about how is it that I can bring the intricacies of where I grew up in. For example, like my mother used to be a volunteer at a PTA at my old elementary school where like the head of the PTA was like my mentor, someone I loved in kindergarten who happens to be a Black woman. Now, Ms. Nisi and my mom never knew that they shared me in common until I was an undergrad. And though there were some language barriers, they loved on each other as sisters and they had each other's backs. And I'm like, how do I explain this Black and brown relationship and coalition building in urban planning? And I can't, but I have to bring that story to every table that I get invited to or I disrupt to. And so I think a lot of what we do as urban planners should be like, my relationship is never to a commitment to institution, but to city, but to residents. And my job is not to be a teacher or a leader, but to be of service. And to the idea of the great places, there's something just popped in my mind and has been thinking that I've been trickling with. But this idea of like restoration has happened. It happens in historic preservation, right? Like all the time we're restoring buildings to their period of significance. But why aren't we thinking about restoring communities to their significance of empowerment? Like what would happen if we looked at what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and say we're gonna restore this community to the thriving that they had, at one point, and we can do that. And so I wonder, like, if there's ways. I think of myself as an infiltrator and using the same systems that are in there and flipping them around and saying like, all right, y'all gonna do this, well, we're gonna flip the script on you. And I think that there's maybe some opportunity to do that. I'm disheartened to see Leimert Park change here in LA. And there's a lot of fucked up things that are happening in Leimert Park. That's another side conversation. All I want to say is that I'm here and I'm happy that this space is happening. I'm of service to everyone's call. So whatever you need and I can provide, and I got connections to something, let me know and I got you.
Thank you, Richard. Real quick, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So we'll try to log out at 8:30. So if you need to hop off, feel free. Before you hop off, please don't forget to drop your email address down below just to kind of stay in touch with everybody, and I'll send it out to everybody that wants it. To top on what Richard was saying, it's really just about being like, you got to be somebody without the badge. And I know that's kind of like, that's not police talk either. Or maybe it is, but when you go into a hood, when you go to a community, it doesn't have to be a hood. When you go to a predominantly Black community or Hispanic, you have to take off the shield of I'm an urban planner, because 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna know. Somebody mentioned it in there. most adults don't know what planners are. Like, if you're Black and you're like me, trying to explain it to your family is, I don't even know. It ain't even worth the time no more. Just tell them, I don't even know what I tell them no more. Because they don't get it. Unless you have older, I talked to my grandma about it, and she knows about survey and all that. But for the most part, they don't understand. Somebody else also asked, like, how do you reach out to communities? And Christy made a good point. When you're Black, most Black communities want to be reached out to face to face. They don't want a flyer. They don't have email. Possibly don't have internet. If they have social media, their kids have it. So if you're 17, 18, you're not trying to follow me talking about urban planning, because that's not what it is. It's really an in-person kind of thing. And I think that's something that our profession has talked about so much in the sense of community engagement is done like through the computer, through email. In reality, like, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to know people that way. You don't get to figure out what they really need and who they really are if you just send emails, send letters in the mail. Most Black people don't want to check the mail because that's where the bills come in. So it's very unlikely that they'll be in touch when things are happening. It's just one of those things of how do we move forward to be better at that. Jalen, go ahead and say your piece. Say what you want to say.
Oh, no, you all pretty much answered my question. I'm Jalen, by the way. I'm up at Boston. I'm a private land use consultant, which is basically for developers, which basically means I tell them where they can build, what they can build, and basically go over the density and the requirements. So I might have interacted with a few of you in LA because I work in LA a lot, even though I'm in Boston. So yeah, my question was basically, I'm just wondering how practical community engagement is with public planners, because, you know, a lot of us learn about it a lot in planning school with Ornstein's ladder of citizen participation. Y'all might remember that. Just these ways of engaging with the community, but I just wanted to see how, you know, in practice, how it looked, how you all did it. Because I remember when I interned for the city of Fayetteville in undergrad, Fayetteville, Arkansas, by the way, I'm from Arkansas. When I interned for the city of Fayetteville in undergrad, you know, there was no community engagement. We were discouraged from engaging with the community. And the community held meetings to discuss planning, especially major planning decisions that were going on, that were being discussed, but we couldn't attend. So, you know, thank you all for the for your answers, and I really appreciate it. And this is a great call. Now I want to shout out Desiree for this, because I randomly just saw this. Somebody retweeted it, and so I shared it to a lot of people. So thanks.
On that, I guess the meat and the potatoes of this whole thing is, of course, we're all in a position to where you may not feel like you have a huge voice, you have a huge say. Disrupting the status quo is obviously really pissing a lot of people off, and you know, people are really showing their true colors around just recognizing racism in the room. So I guess the real question most of us are probably asking is, okay, what are we gonna do? Not in the sense of what can we do. I've been seeing a lot of people ask me like, what can I do? It's more of like a real time in the sense of what are we gonna do? Like you mentioned with the pipeline programs, with Approach APA in a sense of, okay, how do we get these demands and, you know, get them implemented sooner rather than later? How do we get more Black planners connected, and how do we make that impact again sooner rather than later? And that's just, you know, again, I think that's the meat and potatoes of this whole thing, in the sense of what do we want to see to be better? What do we want to do to be better and, you know, create a better impact and be more of an influence? And of course, that looks different for everybody. Everybody in this, you know, call looked at impact and influence totally different. But for the most part, I think I can say that most of us that are non-white that are here, they're here because they saw a missing piece in their community. They saw not too many people that look like them, and they saw some of the corruption that was going on, and they felt like, okay, how can I get in there and make a change? So again, feel free to drop it in the chat, or, you know, at any other time if you don't feel comfortable saying it here. Yeah, if anybody has anything to say. Oh, I promise my cup is coffee. It is not alcohol. I swear. I know it's a solo. It's coffee. I promise.
D, one more thing Byron had again, list of demands. Sorry to keep bringing it back up.
Necessary.
But lastly, I think the next steps I have posted in the group chat just in case I didn't have a chance to say it out loud. But essentially, I've been hearing that it would be a great idea for us to kind of push this on our social media. Once it's finalized, we'll work together somehow, other folks that were involved to create some type of infographic or whatever that would get the message out. But the idea is to push it through a grassroots effort through social media first. And then we can even use some of those ideas to commit change within our own organizations and agencies. And afterwards, some of us have direct connections to APA and some other larger organizations related to planning. So again, we can move forward from there to try to push that agenda to have at least some of those items on the list become implementable. All right.
Definitely. Thank you, Byron. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Richard again. So one thing just happened today, y'all. See, I'm all about infiltrating, and whatever I get, we all get. Like, it's not about me, it's about us. So check this out. So after radicalizing urban planning, there was this conversation I kind of put out there, like, we need to have an equitable planner certification under APA, and that's a way to ensure that community knows who to go to hold projects accountable. And there was this whole thing, but that may not happen. I had a meeting today with someone at APA, and they were like, maybe APA is not going to create the certification. I was like, listen, we just need to get to that meeting so that they tell me no to my face, and then I have the receipts of that no. So then that's a whole nother different strategy. But one thing that did come up is that they're implementing in the next 6 months an equity credit under the current certification, under current AICP certification. They are no longer doing specializations, but they are providing this equity credit. Now they have to figure out what the hell this curriculum looks like. So they might be asking me to be one of those people to consult on this curriculum. And so what I'm offering is, y'all, what are we gonna say at that meeting? And what I mean by we is like, I am so down to be of service to whatever comes out of this conversation and to put those demands at that meeting.
Yeah, so that's great. I think the biggest thing is like figuring out, okay, let's get it down on paper, because for lack of better words, white people like to see stuff on paper, and it's just like that's the main thing they want to see for receipts. So you got to always kind of put it back in their face, like, oh no, we said this. And I think that's really how APA and even like smaller chapters and sections, CNU, maybe even AIA for the people who are in here that are like doubling as architects or landscape architects. That's how they take you that's how they take you serious when they see that, okay, they got some land and they ain't even need us. So like Richard said, whatever comes out of this, if y'all want to, if anybody that wants to, craft your own piece, and then we'll figure out a way to put it all together and make it one concise document. And that way it's something presentable, and it's more so like, okay, it's not just talk, it's like we're trying to really make it reality in a sense of how we move forward and how we really get change going.
Can I say something? This is Gabriella.
Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabriella Nelson. I'm here from Philly. A part of me is just a little confused as to why there's so much emphasis on APA. I think that it's important that we talk about ways outside of that organization to galvanize and get things done. That's really putting a lot of emphasis on an organization that may or may not really care about what we want to do, care about Black liberation. I think a lot of what I think planners should be a part of is political education for Black people, and that does not include APA. It does not have to include APA, and I don't think that any class or any I think that what everyone is saying is great, but I think it's also important to think outside of that. I know for me, I don't care about getting certified. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the impact that I make in my community and making connections with people in my community, people that are directly affected. So it would be great maybe for the next meeting if we could talk about more things outside of the APA and demanding things from the APA, and really talking about things that we can do within our communities ourselves with people that are not even planners, that didn't go to school for planning. And that was the kind of the point of my kid is acting a little crazy. That was the point of my comment in the chat. I don't want Black planners to be so dependent on some organization or some training or some certification that we become the new gatekeepers for what is planning and who is allowed to participate in planning. That shouldn't be it. Planning is political and it's for everybody. And even if you don't have a degree or the job experience, you are still a planner. Like Richard said, you are an expert of your own neighborhood. So how can we just think of things outside of these organizations that maybe, I don't know, because I don't deal with anything APA, but maybe they don't really care. And if they really cared, they would have did something about it anyway.
Call a spade a spade. I'm not even gonna front. I think most of us only care about APA because my graduate program pushed it so hard. Get involved, be an APA. And then I got an APA and I was like, I feel the same. I don't feel like nothing changed. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're gonna get a job. It doesn't guarantee that you're gonna make any waves because like you said, hell, APA may not even care because they have such a big platform. Like Jonathan mentioned it was like a month ago on Twitter, the statement that APA put out was about the weakest statement I've seen any organization put out as far as equity. Like, it was like, my brother typed it. He's 19. He don't know what's going on. And that's how they seem like they typed it from a place of, I know a little bit about what's going on, but I don't. And to be in a profession that really most of us, Black, Latino, even Asian American, are contributing to like what people know about planning and why they care. That's 1,000% us. So I'm definitely down to like completely step outside of the national organizations for the fact of they probably don't even really care about the platform. So no matter how you slice it and dice it and put it to them, they're still going to find a way to put up a roadblock and be like, well, it's supposed to be in APA citation, not MLA. So yeah, I'm down for it, 1,000%. Thank you for like putting that out there and calling it out. And
Also, really quick, sorry, if anyone is interested in city planning and designing specifically for mothers and children, please reach out to me. That is what my interest is. That's what my passion is. If you guys want to know more about some of the things that I'm working on, I did a TEDx Philadelphia talk on city planning and Black maternal mortality. So I can put it in the chat if anyone's interested, but please let's link up because we got shit to do.
Yeah, definitely drop it in the chat. That's a big piece in the sense of accessibility. I think that's something that we don't plan enough for kids and people with kids. I don't have kids, but I see a lot of kids in situations where even parks, you're blindsided from seeing where your kid really is, as far as if strangers, they're hurt. So yeah, definitely, thank you. Drop that in the chat. And somebody mentioned about doing this every quarter or even more often. I'm down. I know everybody has lives. Some people have transitioned back to their offices. Some people may still be working from home. But I'm totally game to do it every quarter or sooner, more frequent. Y'all let me know what y'all want to do.
Hi, this is Fabiola. So I totally agreed with Gabriella. I think I would love to be part of if you guys have a meeting that kind of talks about everything that she just literally discussed. Because, I do, like I mentioned before, I am one of the, very few Black planners here in Rhode Island. And my name is getting around and I've had people reach out to me. And there's this one particular guy that reached out to me because he's a neighborhood, he's a financial guy. He's not a planner, he's a financial guy. And as the president of a minority neighborhood, he is running into like a lot of, issues, discrimination and racist, practices that are hindering citizens in his area. And ultimately what he found is that he needs to educate people about urban planning and urban design. So he reached out to me to kind of educate these folks about, how to engage in how to attend public meetings, what to say, and kind of like that political aspect of it. So I think it'll be really great to have a conversation about everything that she just talked about, because it is outside of APA, because these people, they're not planners. They're not going to pay a membership. So I think that will be really helpful.
Definitely. I'm a planner. I don't want to pay the membership, to be honest. But I think what Gabriella mentioned, everybody's got community leaders. Everybody's got community champions. They could be people that just put on amazing events and they bring out the city in a very positive way. Those are the people that you want to be in touch with. At least for me, from a planner's perspective, those are the people that I want to have it, not just their social media. I want them to have my number in the sense of they're doing something positive without the badge, without the title. They're just doing it, and they're getting people together ASAP. Those are the people that I think, like Fabiola mentioned, that we should be talking to, that we should be kind of putting together and figuring out, especially right now, everybody's trying to buy something. Everybody's trying to have some type of ownership. I think we and them, they have a big say-so on how that's gonna pan out. Gigi, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, for those of you guys who may not know yet, but I have a podcast called the Urban Planners Podcast. So tune in. I have weekly episodes. Currently, I'm doing a Black Urbanist Speak Out series, 6-week series about different things that we're going through as planners. Next week's episode is going to be about being biracial in the planning field. And the 2 people that I interviewed brought a lot of good perspectives as it relates to that. So tune in, and if any of you guys want to be on my podcast, you can head over to my website at ggtheplanner.com, and you could sign up, and we can have a time to chat and talk about, planning stuff.
Definitely. Thank you, Gigi. So if y'all want to do this every quarter, like Gabriella said, I think the next meeting is 1,000% focused on basically like a Black APA. I'm just saying APA just for conversation's sake. It can be something that's like APA, but better. And it's geared toward, it's Black on the surface, but it's also those people that don't have a voice at APA. So Black, Latino, female, Asian American, whatever the case may be. And if not, we could talk about the logistics or whatever, but really getting down to the nitty gritty of, okay, how can we mobilize on our own without using APA as a crutch, without using APA as like big brother, big homie, and just being able to like push forward and be like, okay, this is us, this is who we are, let's get it, in a sense of that. So I'm definitely here for that, and kind of have that whole around discussion, a sense of, I'm not telling y'all to in your membership with APA to stop trying to get your, AICP if that's what you're going for. But as I guess it's kind of taking a look at it, okay, what's APA really doing for me and communities that look like me? And if none of those boxes, if none of those answers really resonate with you, then maybe it's time to break apart and cut the umbilical cord and do our own thing.
And I do want to say too, that NOMA that I mentioned is a minority organization separate from the AIA, which is the equivalent of the APA. So yeah, like a NOMA for planners that was just mentioned in the comments. But one thing I don't want us to forget, I don't think it should be centered around the APA, but we also can't let them off the hook, because the AIA supports NOMA financially. So we don't want to let them off the hook and just walk away. They need to contribute and support the efforts that we do. That's what I'll say.
So we need them receipts. We need the money from APA. We just don't want them to say nothing. I feel it. I'm 1,000% here for that. Somebody said, oh yeah, the list online about APA's 100 essential books, don't even look at it. It's trash. It doesn't, like, half of the books on there. Only book you really need to me is Color of Law. The list that APA has and Planetizen, they have Sugar Hill Gang on there for like top influential urban planners. They just pulling stuff out of the sky. So like somebody mentioned in the chat, it's extremely hard to find any relevance of Black planners or Black people who acted as planners. They don't have to have the planner title, but they've done so much in their work that they pretty much, they're planners. They're advocates for their community. They're advocates for where they live and where they stay. So those are people that, if you know them, if you're one of them, we want you to be highlighted. We want people to know about you. That way you become part of the curriculum. You become part of the narrative, that kind of thing. So, somebody in the chat said, if you are working on a project, can you share it? Just to kind of, I guess, see what everybody's doing. That's cool. If you feel comfortable, you can email it, or we can just create this big Google Drive for Black planners. And somebody mentioned about Planners Network. I don't know a lot about that one. I didn't really get too much into that one. But yeah, so it's 8:32. I don't want to hold y'all too much longer, but I appreciate all of y'all for jumping on the call and just kind of like sharing your 2 cents, being here, listening, talking, and just having that comfortable space to like be us and express the things that no matter how much you try to talk about it to your white colleagues, they just don't get it or don't want to get it. Even like your white bosses or supervisors, or even your black bosses and supervisors. So I'll get everybody's email addresses and everything put together. If you got, like I said, we can meet once a quarter. If y'all want to meet sooner, like I don't know, in another 2 weeks or something, we can do that, just to kind of keep everybody on, I guess keep everybody checked in and kind of keep the momentum going and making sure that we're kind of like just tapping in with one another to see what's going on. And I think when we're doing that, kind of make sure that we stay on top of what some of the things that we talked about today. And then, like, of course, like the next time, talking solely about, okay, the Black disconnection from APA in the sense of what we want to see done. Because in reality, I'm not gonna say it's unlikely that APA will do it, but I think it's more likely that APA will find every roadblock to slow it down and make it a 2-year process when it needs to be maybe like a 6 to 12-month process. So
Can I say something?
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so my name is Sean Robin. I was there was an APA once had an Indigenous Planning Division, and I was with that division. And APA, they're the biggest game in the country. They're not going away. They're extremely conservative. We had to push to make some space for our group. And eventually we fell apart because they required a certain number of members and people couldn't afford to pay it. So we fell apart. But I'm neither for nor against them. I just think they're irrelevant for my own personal interest, which is about planning in the Black community today. I mean, I think, they can be an ally or not, but I don't think we should pin our hopes or too much of our energy on them. I mean, they're a networking opportunity. I've gone to their conferences. I've met other Black planners. I've met other planners of color. So, but I think we need our own ongoing dialogue nationally around what's happening in the Black community. What does planning have to do with it? How do we push for change for our people? And I think this is a great conversation today. I hope that there's a way that we do more of these meetings and that we stay in touch with each other in between these meetings, because I think we are the leaders who can make these things happen more clearly than any chapter of APA is going to do for us.
Definitely, thank you. And I know we're going a little bit over. Like he mentioned, if you've never been to an APA conference, whether state or national, I've never been to a national, only state. You kind of have to like search out for people that look like you, and it gets pretty awkward because you don't see anybody that looks like you, or there's hardly ever any sessions about planning in the Black community. They may throw a Black person on the panel just to make you feel good, but then they start talking about something that has nothing to do with anything. So I definitely agree in that sense of I don't want to bash APA. I don't want to bash anybody in here that is affiliated with APA, or APA cuts their check every 2 weeks or however. I'm just gonna say in the sense of I've been a practicing planner for 2.5 years now, and APA hasn't done any more for me than any other organization that I've been a part of. In the sense of I don't expect them to like send me jobs every week or send me money or anything like that. But as far as the impact that we're supposed to uphold as code of ethics, I don't feel like they've done that in the time that I've been a practicing planner. So I'm 100% Congress of New Urbanism. I went there last year. It was cool. But I'm 100% confident and definitely excited to kind of see where this goes and start trickling away and really kind of compound Black planners, because again, most of us have lived in a community that was predominantly Black, and if not, you're Black yourself, so you got all the knowledge. Like nobody can tell you how to be more Black than a Black person. Like that's just, it's fact. So we can talk about Congress for the New Urbanism and a whole nother call. That's a whole nother whirlwind of issues and pretty much gentrification and gentrifiers from an organizational standpoint. But like I said, thank all of y'all for jumping on the call tonight. I'll get everybody's email addresses. Unless anybody has anything to say, go for it.
Desiree, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Drew. My Instagram is Urban Planning Life. So I've been in the urban planning field for about 10 years, and I'm an environmental planner, urban planner. So I originally came from California, and in California,
I think you're muted, maybe. Let me see.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
In California, they have something called the NAHC, which is the Native American Heritage Commission. So basically what that means is for all the tribes, anytime anything happens in communities or in cities or near the tribal land, right? We have to, as planners or as cities, as jurisdictions, send the NAHC a letter specifying what we're doing near their tribal land. Why don't Black people have stuff like that? Why don't we have that? I've been thinking about this over the years for a long time. We need our own Heritage Commission.
I totally agree 1000%. Harlem, for example, should be its own type of jurisdiction outside of New York City that harbors Black culture, that harbors Black people. I always say police, NYPD shouldn't have jurisdiction over Black bodies, at least in Harlem. And that goes for all different types of neighborhoods throughout the United States that incorporate Black people. I don't personally think that we should be governed by a system that continuously oppresses us. And I think what you just mentioned, yes, sovereignty within the United States, just like the Native Americans have, I think that's something we need to take a look at and research and perhaps even push for full liberation.
Yes. So basically so anytime something happens, they have a seat at the table. It can be as simple as a street improvement project. They're going in, they're taking out pipes, putting in new pipes. The natives sit at the table with the jurisdiction and say, hey, we're gonna have tribal architects at this, when you guys are doing this project, to ensure that nothing is happening that we don't want to happen. Black people need to start being more, I hate to say it, docile. We need to stop that. And we need to be more upfront. What we want to happen in our communities, we need to say, no, that's not what's happening. So I believe we need to have some sort of type of commission in these key cities across the nation that are predominantly of Black, Black communities, such as like Harlem, DC, Leimert Park in LA, Oakland. These areas need to be governed by us, just like he said.
Yeah, and I'm one of those. I think I'm probably one of the few people who's probably tired of having a seat at the table. Like they've never wanted us to sit at the table, so now it's time for us to have our own table. They've never wanted us to be at the table. I don't want to seat. I want to sit. I don't want to squeeze in between two people. I want to have my own chair. I want to have my own voice to say something. And like both of y'all mentioned, amazing points in the sense of so many of us are so quick to downplay what our city's doing. And most of us, if you're on the public side, you know what the city really ain't doing. But so many of us are uneducated and misinformed about what we really need to do. So if we have, that's why so many, our family's from a very small town in Northeast Louisiana that's like 500 people, and they regularly don't have water. That's just how it is. They're connected to the parish, which is like a county, and they cut it off whenever they feel like it. Most Black communities that are unincorporated or small in nature can't survive because they don't have access to sewer, water taps, an engineer that's gonna come in and do it pro bono. So if we have our own, anytime you tell a city like, hey, I don't like that line y'all just put in, it sucked, it didn't do anything, it's constantly backed up, they'd be like, well, you can either get the money or get your own. All you gotta do is pull up the receipts, I got one, so what I gotta do? So I think if we have people like that already on call, planners, engineers, architects, designers, community leaders, social advocates, whatever you wanna call them, that's what's gonna be the key to me. That's gonna really be able to make Black communities predominantly sustainable in the sense of we always have to rely on the city for water, for services, for basically it's like a never-ending loan. Like we always gotta put back into them. We always gotta call them, the water's out, poles down, this, that, and the third. And that's easier said than done. But from what I've been seeing and what I've been reading, that is almost 90%, if not 100% of why most Black communities right now are crumbling or don't have day-to-day services. And I agree with you 1000%, Drew, in the sense of maybe it's time for us to stop being so docile, and maybe it's time to not tell people how you really feel at your job, but let them know to come correct whenever they talk to you. and that, you know, that's you're Black before anything else. So don't let them hit you with that. Oh, I drove through this sketchy neighborhood over the weekend, and you just stop them like, oh, you mean a white neighborhood? Because I think those are sketchy too. Like, you know, it's one of those things of, you want to check people, but you want to check them intellectually, because once you do that, they'll never cross you twice. So I'm definitely, from what Byron and Drew said about being pretty much sovereign in a way that, or, you know, controlled in a way that is by us. And if something falls through the crack, then it's on us, for us, by us kind of thing. And, oh, somebody put Black Planner Collective. I like that. Yeah, so I don't think we need a seat at the table anymore. I think it's a matter of, okay, all of us are here, all of us are educated, been there, done that. We know how to build the table. So how can we get from point A to point B? Like, how can we make our own table, in the sense of, no white person has ever came to me and been like, hey, here's a $65,000 job because you're Black. Nah, it's not happening. So they want to hear about us when it's time to check the box of diversity, when they want to ask a question about, what do Black communities want? That's when they want to talk to us, and that's when they want our 2 cents. Like me, and I hope y'all too, you know, let them know that your price is going up. We can't talk about Black stuff without a price. So every minute you want to talk about Black culture, run that up. That's an invoice. Because the same way that people are looking for resources now, they could have been doing that. All these books that we're talking about and reading and sharing, all these resources, they've been out. I bought Color Law last year at a conference. Like, it's been out. It ain't just come out in 2020 or 2019. Most of us have experienced things that you don't have to read a book. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to go to a class. Like, that is literally our everyday life of being Black. And being this profession is just, I think, put it more on the spotlight of, they really want to call me the N-word, but they not, because there's other people around and they got witnesses, and they don't want that to be a lawsuit. So I 100% agree, in the sense of, even though we're here, we're not really here in the sense of, white people still hold a lot of the power in this profession, in the sense of, a white developer can come into a place like Harlem, a place like Oakland, a place like East Austin, and still they can drop a bag and be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. So even if you have Black planners in those cities, in those communities, they're still gonna be like, well, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to call them out on things that are egregiously wrong on that site plan, or I don't want to call them out on things that there's the research that they did about this community that's not even close to right. At the end of the day, money talks, but white people still get to last say so in a community that they have they don't have any value, and they don't have any stock in. They just want to be able to push everybody out, put up condominiums, and keep it pushing. Integration never worked. So yes, like I said earlier, we'll try to meet again. If y'all, instead of every quarter since the year, like, it's kind of weird right now, we can meet again like in 2 weeks. Yeah, on the 22nd, if that works for everybody. If not, I mean, I'll record them. That way you can always go back and look at them. And we will meet an hour earlier. Yes, I'm really bad at time zones, so bear with me on that. I was gonna do 6, but I forgot everybody's like LA, East Coast. I'm bad at time zone, so we can do 6. Well, 6 my time. I don't know what that is, some of y'all's time. But yeah, we can do that. We can just kind of shoot for July 22nd, and then on that call, we can really dig more into what this Black collective looks like what that means and who we are. And we're not acting as gatekeepers, we're just acting as people. And for example, with Harlem, we're gatekeepers of the people that are already here to make sure they can stay here. We're gatekeepers of the people, this culture and this community that are already here, and figuring out how to entice them and how to really, you know, empower them to understand. People can't build a new, you know, Black Wall Street or whatever the case may be without knowing some of the pitfalls that come in real estate, investing, development. And a lot of us tend to jump on board with somebody white because they got the money and they said that they're gonna do it. And then they get into it and they end up being kind of like the Uncle Tom in that situation, in the sense of that person provided the insight and the intel to this developer, and now this developer's going in and, you know, acting like they knew what was up already. So we'll shoot for July 22nd. If anybody, of course, if you have anything, if you want to, you know, talk about before that, feel free to email myself, Byron, anybody else that you saw in this group that you was like, I like what they do, I want to connect with them. if you can, you can drop your social media down there just to kind of stay in touch with people, whether they're on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn for whatever godforsaken reason. And we'll see y'all on the 22nd. Thank y'all again for coming out. I'll put everybody's email addresses together, and we'll get it popping. Y'all have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
organizing.
Good night.
Thank y'all for showing up.
Thanks, D.
For sure. Thank you. Now, how do I save this? Save this chat.